Over the past 20 years, both North and South Dakota have experienced a wet cycle that has created countless fisheries that never existed before. These former duck sloughs and dry lake beds now have basins that are deep enough to support booming populations of perch and walleye. Devil's Lake in northeastern North Dakota went from a 45,000-acre lake with a maximum depth of 20 feet to over 200,000 acres of water with a maximum depth of 65 feet. Across the Dakotas, this new high water has rejuvenated lakes that previously existed and created many new lakes that offer once-in-a-lifetime fishing opportunities that didn't exist a generation ago. These dishbowl glacial lakes typically feature flat, featureless basins with little structure. Finding perch and walleyes in this environment often means drilling a lot of holes. On today's show, we fish Devil's Lake at first ice and northeastern South Dakota near Watertown at late ice, when strong winds and frigid conditions make you thankful to hunker down inside a thermal shelter. When you can't move around, you can still pick key locations where fish move underneath you. Finding the exact locations to sit can be a daunting task on new water that features poor contour maps with vague GPS mapping. But with the right strategy, you can be successful when your mobility is limited.
There's a jumbo. There we go. Beauty. Tell you what, I'm not the most patient person in the world, but every once in a while, you just have to roll up your sleeves and just sit on good spots to catch fish, and that's what we're going to do today. But see outside, I mean, that wind is just bucking, major front coming through. Probably 30-mile-an-hour winds pushing on us. And there's no doubt that these fish have shut down. I mean, I can hardly pry them off the bottom. I've got the auto zoom on the Vexlar on, and I can just barely get the fish to separate from the bottom. And when you get these tough bites, one of the best things to do is just roll up your sleeves, sit in a spot, and in this case we're just using a buckshot rattle spoon with a single hook and a minnow and just waiting them out.
Waiting out fish with a dead stick presentation is a top location when fish turn off. This strategy only works, however, if new fish keep swimming below you. The key is to focus on transitions and edges that funnel these fish as they move. At first ice and late ice, a top location is the edge of the shoreline contour where it transitions to the basin. Where the hard bottom stops, this edge is a prime contour if you have to sit. Once you locate this transition, focus on outside and inside turns. These locations are high percentage spots that become especially important when you can't move a lot.
This is just a 48-inch meat stick. I love this rod for dead sticking. That way I can spread my lines out and kind of keep everything spread out. And you know, that's the name of the game, use as many lines as possible. In North Dakota we can use 4 lines, but you know, even in Minnesota, a lot of states we use 2 lines. You know, get as many rods in the water as possible. When these fish come through, you just have that much more chance of catching a fish, because you know, this takes patience. Not like you're going to run a gun and go anywhere, and so just a matter of maximizing your time. Another dandy. What I'm doing here is I'm just using these meat stick rods, and it's just got a light tip. I just lay them out and just watch those tips, and those tips will just dunk when that fish hits the minnow. But one thing I like to do a lot, this is just a small buckshot rattle spoon. You see here, instead of using that traditional treble hook, I've got a long shank Aberdeen hook. I'll show you here. What I like to do is just take a little minnow, and I started hooking them this way years ago, and it's the best thing that I found. Right through the hide, right toward behind the gill, that head hook facing towards the head, just like that. That minnow can wiggle on there pretty good. There's a lot of action, but the big thing with the spoon is that the minnow can't get away, and so that minnow can just roll in place. It can even try to swim pretty frantically, but it can't go anywhere, and that really helps with tough fish. And that long shank hook, when that fish sucks it in, it pivots, and these fish can grab it and get it in their mouth with very little effort. And that, on a tough bite, where these fish won't chase traditional spoons and traditional aggressive tactics, that's about as effective as it gets. You know, typically what I'll do is I'll just set these up to where they're 4 inches, 3 inches off the bottom. Keep them really close to the mud. Seems like when these fish get tough, they won't even come up a foot after it. So a lot of times just drop it down and just crank it up just a half turn, just so that it's real tight. There's a good fish. Oh, look at there. There's a dandy perch there. There's a dandy perch. Wow. Lip them like a bass. There we go. That is look at that girth on that fish. That's just beautiful. Got him right in the tip of the beak. Boy, might have to get my pliers out of my pocket here. Here. Boy, that is a good fish there. You know, this is pretty typical. Tougher the bite, the simpler it gets, just nuts and bolts fishing. But, you know, sitting with just the smallest little minnow that you can find. I mean, just tiny little fathead minnows. And I tell you what, that's the last line of defense. This has saved me so many days when it's just been really, really tough conditions. These fish are glued to the bottom. They won't chase anything. They won't accelerate towards you, and they're skittish. You move the lure and they swim away. That's a minnow bite, and there's a lot of different ways you can fish these minnows, but that's the most effective thing there is when these massive fronts roll through and the fishing gets super tough.
Jason Mitchell Outdoors is brought to you by Shields, North Dakota Tourism, Clam, Vexilar, Jason Mitchell Elite Series Rods, Ice Armor, Northland Tackle, Cooper Chevrolet, Bionic Line, and Salmo.
To find out more information on Jason Mitchell Outdoors, make their official webpage one of your favorite pages. Find out upcoming show schedules and air times, along with past shows, article and product reviews at jasonmitchelloutdoors.com. Great information on the outdoors is just one click away.